Today I want to share one of the key strategies to eliminate low back pain. Now this can eliminate it immediately. I've seen it happen. It can certainly reduce the pain, but it has to be put into context when this is happening and the type of lower back pain that you have. So the strategy is bracing. We're going to look at bracing the abs, bracing the lats, bracing them both, and then when this strategy can eliminate lower back pain. So we're going to put it into some context at the end as to when it can happen and the type of back pain that you need to have for it to happen, either immediately or certainly reduce the lower back pain. Number one is bracing the abs. So the anatomy that we're talking about is we've got the rectus abdominis here, but we've also got the obliques to the outside, and this is what we are bracing. We are bracing this entire abdominal wall. And how does this stabilize, or how does it eliminate lower back pain? Well, if you can imagine you've got a pole coming up here, and what this pole wants to do is it will simply fall over if we don't tie it down. So what we would do is we would get some guy ropes, for example, and we would sort of tie it to the floor. So there would be one to the left, one to the right, one at the front and one at the back. So all of this is tacking down this pole. And this pole is essentially our spine. So what we are doing with the abdominal wall is we are tacking down the spine, and we are holding each segment. So that would be a vertebra, a disc, a vertebra, a disc, a vertebra, all the way down. And then what we are doing with our muscles, we are tacking down each segment of the spine and holding it in place. When these muscles are loose, these ropes or strings are slack, and it leaves the pole open to movement. And this would be described as an unstable spine. So what we need to be able to do is tack this down. Now, how does it reduce pain? Well, when we tack the spine down and we stabilize it, it does a couple of things. So it can prevent any micro movements that can happen between any of these segments. Now, when I talk about micro movements, I mean micro. It's not like a vertebra is literally going to slide off the top of a vertebra like that. We're talking micro movements. But when a micro movement happens, muscles will go into spasm. The same with regards to a disc bulge. Is it holds the spine in place. It can hold the neutral spine in place. So again, we're tacking down the neutral spine and can prevent it from rounding, which is then going to increase the likelihood of any disc bulging or disc irritating the nerve. So we need to think about it in that way. So by tensioning the abdominal wall, we are stabilizing the spine, which is going to reduce or potentially eliminate pain. Then we have bracing the lats, which you can see is this muscle here that covers basically 3/4 of the back. It joins into the back of the arm. Now, this is where the shoulders become involved in this muscle. But what we've also got down here is the thoracolumbar fascia. So it joins in to this thoracolumbar fascia. So what we can start to understand is when we were talking about these guy ropes holding up our spine, essentially, we've got the abdominal wall, which is the front. So if I do a bird's eye view and we've got each rope coming off, the front, these two, would be the abdominal wall. Then we've got the lats coming down the back, which would be, so the lats and the thoracolumbar fascia as well. So again, we're tacking down the back. Now we can find out which one is the best. We can test it. So it might be that you need to brace the abdominal wall. It might be that you need to brace the thoracolumbar fascia. It might be that you need to brace both, which we're going to talk about in a second. So how does it stabilize and how does it reduce pain? Well, it's a very similar principle in that it tacks down and stabilizes the spine. But what it's doing is it's working with this thoracolumbar fascia. So when you tension the lats, and how you do this essentially is press down each shoulder. So what you're doing is you're activating the lats to pull the shoulders down into the rib cage. Now what this is doing, this is bringing tension to the thoracolumbar fascia. So it will stretch it across, and then obviously when you do it the other side, it will stretch it across. Now this thoracolumbar fascia is essentially being tensioned across the lower back, which again is doing the same thing and holding the vertebra in place. Now what we have to be able to do is understand the pain triggers and understand the solution to it, in that is it the abdominal wall is more effective, or is it the lats that are more effective? So we have to understand that to understand whether we need to do one, the other, or both. But essentially, we are bracing the lats by pressing the shoulders down into the rib cage, which will activate the lats. And essentially, if you can imagine the thoracolumbar fascia as this diamond, what we're doing is we're pulling this side of it, we're pulling this side of it. If we engage the glutes as well, we're pulling this side and this side, and this is essentially bringing tension all across the thoracolumbar fascia, across L5, S1, L5, L4, L4, L3, L3, L2, L2, L1, L1, T12. So it's pulling and tensioning across all of those vertebral segments. So it's a very useful way of tensioning and bringing stability to the lumbar spine. And finally, we've got bracing both. So bracing the abdominal wall, so this section here at the front, and bracing the lats on one side, and bracing the lats, what would be here, on the other side. Now again, how does this stabilize? Exactly the same as I've described. We're just doing it from the front and the back. How does it reduce pain? Again, it's exactly the same as we've talked about. But what we are doing is we are bracing the abdominal wall here. We are pressing the shoulders down into the rib cage as well here. And this again is bringing tension. If this is a bird's eye view, it's bringing tension all around the torso to stabilize the spine, which would be at the back here. So finally, when is this going to work from us? When can this eliminate your pain immediately? Well, when we use a flexion test. So what you can see here is me, I'm sat up, I've got my neutral spine posture, I'm holding the underside of this bench that I'm sat on, and what I'm doing is I'm pulling myself down into the bench. So what I'm essentially doing is squashing the spine. Now, what can happen here is right at the base of your spine, you may be able to experience a pain trigger. So there may be just a mild a trigger of pain. So if we go into the neutral spine and we get pain, what we can do is we can brace the abdominals and then retest. And what can happen is you can experience pain without the brace, but then when you do a brace, the pain either becomes eliminated or reduced. So what we've found is that key strategy to eliminating your lower back pain and reducing it, so eliminate it effectively immediately, but reducing it over the long-term period as long as we remember to do it. So when we go into any postures that trigger the pain, which is that compression, we can use the brace before the spine gets compressed to eliminate the pain. When we go into this flexed posture, we just do exactly the same. So you can see me here. I'm in a flexed posture, but I'm doing the same. It's only about 20-30% I'm pulling down. It's not a hard pull. But when you go into this flexion, again, you may experience pain. So you come out, you brace the abdominals. In some respects, you can then brace the lats, and you can do that over here as well. You brace the lats. I would recommend doing one, the other. So brace the abdominals, come out. Did it work? Brace the lats. Did it work? Brace both. Did it work? So which strategy works best for you? But essentially what we're doing is we're trying to get that mild trigger so we can understand that there's pain at the base of the spine when we're in flexion. We come out, we brace the abdominals, and we then go back into pulling ourselves down into the test. Then all we need to think is, did that retest either reduce or eliminate the pain? If it did, again, when we go into any flexion posture, this bracing is going to be a useful strategy to either eliminate the pain immediately or reduce the pain over a long period of time. So that is when this strategy can eliminate or reduce your lower back pain, potentially immediately, but certainly reduce it over the long period. So it's a very simple test. It's a very simple way of measuring and retesting the strategies that we're choosing. Are they working? And then we just need to journal that over a prolonged period of time. So when you're going into these flexion postures, when you're bracing your abdominals, is it working, and is it working over a long period of time? So there is one key strategy to help eliminate lower back pain, potentially immediately, but also over the long period of time. So many thanks for watching. My name is Chris from Christopher Holt Training. Hopefully this has been helpful. I will speak to you in the next tutorial.